the recording on. Please welcome for his debut as Sergeant at Arms at Online Presenters. Please give a really warm hand for our, from Manchester, Andrei Smolenko.
Thank you very much, Nick, Mr. President, and thank you very much, online presenters and guests. I'm Andrei Smolenko, and I'm your SAA, Sergeant at Arms. This meeting of online presenters has now begun. Guests, please note that in order to be a member of our club, you must be a current or former active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 speeches from either the traditional pathway programs, or you must have substantial relevant presentation experience that you demonstrate in a 3 to 5 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for memberships are subject to board approval. If you have not already done so, please change your panel to ensure it shows your name and role, if you have one. Right-click and select Rename to do so. We have members and often guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video contribution and audio contribution may be used for club marketing purposes. Also, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. The theme of today's meeting is crossed wires. Crossed wires, bear it in mind. Please welcome our club president, Nick Lahani.
Thank you very much, Andrei. Thank you for that. I'd like to introduce myself properly. My name is Nick Lahani. I live in Manchester in the UK, and I'm a proud member of Manchester Communicators, also obviously Online Presenters, and a couple of other online clubs as well. Today is a very special day for me because it marks the 4-year anniversary of me walking into and signing up to my very first Toastmasters club. So I'm really, really happy that I actually went along to that meeting, and look where it's led me to. So it's fantastic. One key point here is in Manchester, we don't have a heat wave. It's a little bit cold, and we're nowhere near Boston. But those of you who are at the beginning know that about the joke. Today, we're going to have a great meeting. Let's keep to time. Let's keep the tempo up, and let's help our Toastmaster and General Evaluator do a fabulous job. So all the way from USA, please welcome our Toastmaster of the day, Emily Thompson.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you, members of Online Presenters, and thank you, guests. This is going to be my first time as Toastmaster of the Day for Online Presenters. So tell me if I have spinach on my teeth or if I make a faux pas or something, just put it in the chat. Today our theme is going to be crossed wires, and Jim Barber has an appropriate illustration there. It kind of looks like my car when we tried to drive the children home from camping 10 years ago, and our wires kept shorting out against the car. My husband took it in and said, "The car's dangerous, we have to fix it." And the mechanics essentially took every single piece off in order to get the electrical net. They took pictures of the car disassembled, and then they fixed the wire. There was a little tiny wire, and it was shorting against the body of the car, which had led us to be driving around with no panel lights and no rear lights when we were trying to drive home from vacation at nighttime, which, as you can imagine, I was holding a flashlight for 2.5 hours as we were trying to get home. And so that was a crossed wire, a shorted out wire. So that's the actual example of a crossed wire. And what would a crossed wire be in conversation? This would be when 2 speakers think they're talking about the same thing when they're not. For example, my young nephew went to Cub Scouts and was going to graduate to the next level. And he and his dad were being told that next they were going to become taggers. And they looked at each other and said, "What's a tagger?" Well, a tagger to us means something else, somebody who spray paints the walls with decorations and graffiti. And so they asked the scout leader, "What's a tagger?" And they said, "You know, lions and tigers and bears." And they were talking about big cats. Okay, so that's our introduction to the word of the theme of the meeting, and the word of the day is hilarity, which is what ensues when you figure out that you've had a miscommunication or your wires have been crossed. We have a fun meeting lined up for you today. We have 3 parts to it. In the first part, we have prepared speeches, and we have 3 fabulous prepared speeches. Then we have some fun with our informal speaking or table topics, where people speak off the cuff. And then finally, we have evaluations of the prepared speeches. And we call that the secret sauce of Toastmasters, where we don't just practice speaking, but with the secret sauce, we get better and better every time. I can't do this alone, and we have a lot of support roles to help us with that. I would like to introduce some of these support roles. Our first support role is that of timer, and we have distinguished Toastmaster David Carr. Would you tell us about that, please?
I sure will. Typically, the timing is for a speech would be green at 5 minutes, yellow at 6, red at 7, and then 30 seconds to wrap up. 30 minutes would be a little bit long. And you will see the same general pattern of sort of minimum, maximum, and in between for each of the different roles.
All right, thank you, David. Our next supporting role is a counter, and our distinguished Toastmaster Christian Ramchurn has taken that role on for us. Thank you, Christian, for doing that. Would you like to tell us about your role?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. It's always hilarious to hear my surname pronounced correctly at 3 in the morning at my end. But here's what our counter is all about. It's as our counter, I'm going to note any overused words or filler sounds used as crutched by anyone who speaks during the meeting. It's as simple as that. Words may be inappropriate interjections such as and, well, but, so, and you know. Sounds may be and And what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my report at the end of the meeting, and I'm going to be listening. Madam Toastmaster, back to you.
Thank you, Christian, for that. Our next helper, our next support role is grammarian, and Donna Knight has kindly stepped in to help us out with that role. Donna, would you tell us about your role, please?
Madam Toastmaster, yes, it is my pleasure to serve as your grammarian, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about crossed wires. And today in speech, how that might look. It might be a malapop. It might be various things that might happen in speech and cause hilarity, which is our word of the day. Today, I'm going to ask you just to relax, enjoy the speech, enjoy what is there, the fun that ensues. And when there is anything for me to say to you later on about your speech, commendations and recommendations, I will share with you some of them for the group and some of them afterwards. Please see your chat for a few other areas that you can look at in terms of crossed wires and the word hilarity. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much for that, Donna. Thank you for filling in the role. We also have chat monitor, and this is Cheney, and I forgot to write down your last name. Cheney, will you please tell us your role?
Yeah, definitely. So I will be monitoring the chat during today's evening meeting, and I will be answering any questions, encouraging anything that needs to happen. For example, the guests adding a G in front of their name, and then looking for any hilarity that is occurring in the chat to be able to find out at the end.
Thank you, Cheney Ockert, and thanks so much for filling in that role. Next, our next helper is vote counter, Rosina Duncanson. Would you please tell us about your role?
Certainly. Thank you so much, Madam Toastmaster. So my role tonight is easy. After the speakers, evaluators, table topics, speakers have spoken and they meet the time criteria, you will have the chance to vote privately to myself in the chat. And so be sure to vote for speaker, table topics, and evaluator privately in the chat once they've met the time criteria. And I will go ahead and tally them at the end and advise you of who would have won. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosina, for that. We are now ready to, I'm just checking. I think I've got everything. Okay, I've got all roles. I have watcher. Okay, I'm so sorry. So thankfully, Antoinette was watching. Our next role is watcher. Antoinette Trim, will you please tell us about your role?
Thank you very much, Toastmaster Emily. And I have to be on the, I have to put the finger on my pulse. I'm at the watcher for this evening. I'm here to observe how neatly that we fit in our little squares and also to make recommendations or commendations when needed to do so. Back to you, Toastmaster of the day, Emily.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Antoinette. And people have to keep writing in the chat because David put in 3 very interesting words, I think it was David, about different ways to cross wires. And I don't know what dogberryism is, but I know if I keep reading, I'll find out. Someone will ask them. So find out what that is, and I'll be able to read it later. It's now time to move on to our fabulous 3 speakers. Our first speaker is going to be Michael Alexander, distinguished Toastmaster, and he will be speaking from the Dynamic Leadership Level 3, Increasing Knowledge. To most of the world, the American Electoral College is a mystery. To most Americans, it is not a mystery. It is something we understand incorrectly. A history lesson is due to everyone. Please help me welcome Dr. Michael Alexander.
Thank you very much, fellow Toastmasters and Toastmasters from around the world. America has an unusual system, and I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to try to explain it to the rest of the world and also to Americans who have been trained incorrectly in history, as happens every day in our school system. Let me start off with this piece of perspective. 58 times in American history, we've had a presidential election. And in 53 of those cases, the winner of the presidential election was the man who had the largest popular vote. And in the other 5 cases, it wasn't. Now, Americans think that there's something wrong with this system, that the person who has the highest number of popular votes should be the president. On the other hand, if you look at the number of scandals, wars, and impeachments that have resulted, it's actually not certain that the popular vote guarantees success in choosing the right person. But what were the founding fathers thinking when they decided that instead of the popular vote choosing who would be president, they would establish an elaborate system where every state would have 1 vote for every member of Congress, which was in theory proportional, and also 2 votes for their senators. Now, anybody who can do the math will tell you that means that states which have small numbers of people actually have a higher percentage of votes counted, an advantage over those which have large ones. The founding fathers knew this. They were good at math. They were good at science. They were brilliantly educated. And so if you'd said to them, the winner of the popular vote might not be the winner in the Electoral College, might not be the next president, not only would they not have been surprised, frankly, they would have wondered why in the world that bothered anybody. Now, in order to understand this, you have to realize that the United States is intended to be originally a unification of states. It was not intended to be a national organization. We refer to it as the federal government, as federalism. Why? Because the concept was that each state was fundamentally independent, but we established a federal government to help the states work with each other. And so the initial concept of the Electoral College was to give each state a balanced amount of representation to create a situation in which they could work together and no state would feel unfairly disadvantaged, although the larger states would have more votes than the smaller states. Now, for people who follow the European common market, it was a similar thought. There's the common union, but there's also the nation of France, of Germany, of Turkey. And each of those countries has to work together in a common way. And England decided they didn't like that, by the way, which is not fundamentally that different from the way the American South decided they didn't like the way the government, the federal government, was working for them and thought they would branch off. It's a universal problem. So who should cast the votes? Well, it's a little different. But the basic concept was that the states would make their own decisions and work in a balanced set. The concept originally was a federal government. That's no longer the concept of the American government. The concept of the American government now is that we have a national government. Well, we still call it the federal government. Words change. But the concept now is that the national government will make the fundamental decisions, and those things which aren't important enough to be decided at a national level will be decided at the state level. So that's a different world. And the Electoral College serves the old concept, not this new concept of nationalism. So when Americans are told, well, they set up the Electoral College because they couldn't count that high, that's not why. When they're told, however, that the Electoral College was designed so that the members could say, people have been misled. There have been demagogues. They've been confused. That was the original concept, yes. And then America passed the faithless electors rule that said that you had to vote the way the people in your state did. And it changed everything because we have a different concept than we had then. Before the Civil War, they said the United States are. Now we say the United States is. This is the change that has occurred, and this is the change which we have to think about when we decide if we want to continue with an electoral college or move to a different basis. But Americans should not forget there was a reason, and the founding fathers, who were not omniscient, had something they were trying to do. And I don't think we should change it without at least acknowledging that they had an initial concept. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Dr. Michael Alexander. And our example there of crossed wires is, you were talking about a college that has neither students nor professors, and yet it is essential to our nation. The United States is the nation of which I speak.
A friend of mine did write an electoral college fight song, however.
Okay, well, we need a sweatshirt then as well to go with this. to go with the song. Thank you for that. It's time for us to go to our next speaker. Our next speaker is going to be Lukas Calafell. Lukas Calafell is speaking from the Strategic Relationships Level 1, Mastering Fundamentals. He'll be giving an icebreaker. The title of his speech is Learning Has Changed. The way we discover and learn has certainly changed over time. If we reflect on our past, we can surely identify times when we wish we had the technology that we have today. Our next speaker will reflect on one such time. Completing his icebreaker for his second path, Strategic Relationships, please help me welcome Lukas Calafell.
If you saw me as a kid, you would have guessed that I was going to be a drummer. Growing up, I would go to my grandmother's house every day after school, pull the throw pillows from her couch, and spread them out across her bed. I found these 2 white sticks in her closet. I don't really know what they were used for or where they came from, but I thought, aha, let me use those sticks to complete my improvised drum set. I banged away on the throw pillows with the song in mind, but no rhythm. Over time, I finally decided I need a proper drum set. What does a kid do? Well, they asked their parents for one for Christmas, and I got it. I set up my drum set in my room, banged away at the drums with the song in mind, but still no rhythm. Aha, I need a book to teach me to play the drums. So I went to my mom again and asked her for a drum book. She agreed to get me one, but what she came back with was frankly disappointing. When I received the book, I looked at it in confusion because I realized that this book wasn't going to teach me to play drums like this. It was rather going to teach me to play a drum like this. Confused and frustrated, I went back to my mom and said, this is the wrong book, you gotta get me something else. And her response was simply, well, I got you something, so deal with it. And I tried. I went through the book trying to figure out how I could learn to play the drums with a book that clearly wasn't meant for that. The process just wasn't working, and I became discouraged. The final straw came when my cousin visited. He played with my drum set, but he accidentally broke my snare drum. My goal of learning to play the drums was dead. And like any regular kid, I got distracted by something else and moved on. Looking back at this story, I think about how technology could have corrected this bad experience. If I had the technology that we have today, I could have simply pulled up YouTube and typed how to play the drums. I could have done a Google search and found maybe locals in the area who would teach drum lessons. I could have done a Google search and found the right book to teach me to play the drums. Fellow Toastmasters, the way that we learn and access information has definitely changed. Think of a basic task like tying your shoes. Surely we all know how to tie our shoes, but there is someone on YouTube that's creating content showing others how to tie their shoes in particular patterns based on the kinds of shoes that they are wearing. How do I know this? I looked it up. I'm sure that you, at one point, opened up Google and typed the magic words, how to. I'm at a point now where maybe I could pick up my goal of learning to play the drums. I mean, I have everything that I need. I can go to Amazon and find the best drum set for me based on what I can afford. I can go to YouTube and pull up countless of drum experts, professionals to get me started on the best way to play. I have all the information and all the resources that I need at my fingertips. I don't need to ask my mom or family members or anybody, hey, can you get this for me? I can get it on my own. So maybe I will rekindle that goal to learn to play the drums so that I can bang on the drums with the song in mind, but this time with rhythm. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you very much for that icebreaker. And in your speech, you were talking about drumsticks, and drumsticks can be misunderstood. I just made a roast chicken to celebrate a holiday here in the United States, and we fought over who got the drumsticks, but it wasn't your kind of drumsticks.
I hope there was no confusion.
There was no confusion. We ate the correct ones. Our third speaker for tonight is Graham Cairns. He will be speaking from the Innovative Planning Level 5, Demonstrating Expertise, Reflect on Your Path. The title is More in Sorrow Than in Anger. And this is Graham's last speech in the Path Innovative Planning. So help me welcome, please, Graham Cairns, Distinguished Toastmaster.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests. In Shakespeare's play Hamlet, Horatio says of the ghost of Hamlet's father, who was frowning, his countenance was more in sorrow than in anger. Well, this countenance, colleagues and confreres, is of a man whose plans and hopes have ended up derailed, not just by my own actions, but by that great destroyer of plans, COVID-19. And yet it too is a countenance set more in sorrow than in anger. Now, I'm not happy that my plans went awry, but I'm not bitter either, because I have some reflections that I can take from that experience. I started the innovative planning path nearly 3 years ago, and I had no great expectations apart from wanting to improve my planning and delegation skills. I mean, it wasn't like some of my other paths, 2 of which I've completed and 5 of which are still underway. Many of those paths, I started out with a specific intent. I wanted to make every project about humour, for example, or every project from the icebreaker on forward to be training focused. But no, with innovative planning, I just thought I'd see where the whim took me. Here's a question for you, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and confreres. For those of you who are considering a second path, you might ask yourself that question. Do you just want to take a scattergun approach based on everything I learn makes me a better me? Or do you want a disciplined, focused, goal-oriented approach? Now, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. In fact, I am adopting both approaches across my various paths, but it is an issue that is worth reflecting on for you, as it was for me. So as I say, this was only my second path. And so I did the traditional icebreaker. You know, I was born at a very young age in a hospital to be near my mother and all that sort of stuff. The first and second speeches, which I did, were whatever I felt like doing, including one on the power of storytelling. And I have to thank Lois for her evaluation in this very club of that speech. I still use some of the advice that she gave me. The research and present speeches included my love of history, because I love history and I love to tell stories from history. So that wasn't very path specific. So why had I chosen innovative planning if I wasn't going to be path specific? It's a question I've reflected on over the past 3 years. Level 2, on the other hand, did start me thinking specifically about planning, because that's what this path is about. The first speech was on leadership, and I spoke about leading in Toastmasters, stepping up and getting things organized and helping my colleagues and my confreres develop. The speech about connecting with the audience, which seemed a little unusual for an innovative planning path, but it was one of the requirements. I used it to talk about setting goals and getting the audience to join you as you set goals. The third speech is common to all level 2s, and that is Introduction to Mentoring. And once again, I went back to the general because it was easiest to do that. But level 3 in innovative planning is where it starts, where the rubber starts to hit the road. One of the requirements of level 3 is that you have to present a proposal. And this was my first example of actually failing to achieve a goal. I gave that to one of my clubs, a club of which I was at the time president, that is Global Trainers Online. Like this club, it is a club dedicated to developing trainers. And my proposal was a pun on the name, Global Trainers Online. I wanted to do growing trainers online. And part of this was I wanted to help the club, which was at that stage struggling with membership, to achieve distinguished status and to move on beyond that point. Well, I got halfway there. We have, and still are, at 20+ members. But I didn't succeed in what I wanted the club to do, and that was to return to its focus of just training. And so I'm counting that as partly successful, partly not. The other two speeches that came up in that level were really weird. There are all of the options that are available, and I thought, well, why don't I do storytelling? Because as I say, storytelling is something that I like, and why don't I do vocal variety? It's not as if I needed to do this, but I thought, what the heck, that'll help complete that level and move me on to level 4. But as I say, I started this back in 2018. February 18, I started this path. My level 4 project to manage a project successfully actually didn't happen until June 30 this year. It was a last chance speechathon. Basically, one of my other clubs, because we had by this stage gone to meeting online, gave people from around the world the chance to complete their CC manual or their ACS or their ACB manuals, because, as you know, that was all ending at the end of last financial year, the 30th of June. And so I ran a successful project, the Last Chance Speechathon. And I was actually quite successful with this one. I'm happy with it because we got 10 speakers from 5 continents all speaking at a meeting that gave them that last chance. And so I thought, yes, that's a success. The Q&A session, which was an important part of this particular level, level 4, was rebuilding a club. And I did that in July 19. I was the coach of the club at the time, and we ran this question and answer session on rebuilding the club. And that was, as I say, in July 2019, 6 months before COVID hit. Well, the club started to rebuild, and it has, like many clubs around the world, collapsed into a heap since then. The club still exists, but it's not doing well. You may not know this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Toastmasters, which had 360,000 members at this time 2 years ago, is under 300,000 members now. COVID has cut a swathe through many of our clubs. That doesn't mean that we have to give up, though. My HPL for this particular project, for this particular path, was to conduct a 10th anniversary meeting for one of my other clubs, and that worked really well online. So that led to the panel discussion, what do we want that club to look like? Each of these projects, I thought I had a handle on. And in some, it succeeded, but in others, COVID or my own ineptitude got in the way. So it is more in sorrow than in anger that I have to report that all of these plans didn't go quite according to plan. But I started with a quote from Shakespeare. I'll end with another quote from Shakespeare. Even if things didn't go quite the way I intended, they still went some way. And all's well that ends well. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you very much for that. We have completed our 3 speeches, 3 excellent speeches, and I am going to ask our timer of the day, David. Mr. Timer, can you tell us, did all 3 people make their times?
Actually, Graham ran over by a bit. I'm glad he took the time to finish his thought, but technically he was over. So I guess it would be between Michael and Lukas for
Okay,
voting.
so for voting, please vote for the best speaker. And this is going to therefore be between Dr. Michael Alexander and Lukas Calafell. You will vote by using private chat, and our vote counter, Rosina Duncanson, can be found under the letter V for vote counter. Please send your vote to her. Our next activity for today is going to be, I see that we have an induction and an induction of a new member. We are going to, I'm going to hand this over to Lou Brown, our fabulous Vice President of Membership, and he will induct our new member. Please help me welcome Lou Brown.
Thank you very much, Madam Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. Allow me a moment to share my screen. Okay, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests, on behalf of Online Presenters Toastmasters, it is my duty and privilege to induct Angela Heath into our club. This is an important occasion both for Angela and for our club. As experienced speakers and Toastmasters, Angela will enrich us as we strive to enrich her in a spirit of sharing and enjoyment. Together, we expand our effectiveness as dynamic leaders, presenters, and communicators. Now, Angela, please wait until I call on you to affirm your commitment to the Toastmaster promise. In the presence of fellow online presenters, do you pledge to attend meetings regularly and prepare for each assignment, to actively participate in club activities, to evaluate others in a positive, constructive manner, to build open, friendly relationships with our fellow members, and to bring other new members into the club so that they can gain the benefits of Toastmasters? Angela, please unmute and say, I do.
I do.
Wonderful. To the current members of Online Presenters, I remind you of your pledge to support Angela in her quest for self-development, to provide her with positive, helpful evaluations, to maintain a friendly, supportive atmosphere, and to make her online presentations Toastmaster membership a rewarding and fulfilling experience. Congratulations, Angela, and welcome to Online Presenters. Folks, please feel free to unmute and give her a welcome round of applause.
Yay!
Congratulations. I will take the meeting back from Lou. Lou, are you done?
Sorry, I was just going to say back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
All right, we got it. It appears we have found I first need to confirm with BDC, did you find an evaluator? We need an evaluator for speaker 2, Lukas C.
I am not aware of an evaluator yet.
Okay, I had a volunteer, Graham Cairns, who gave a fabulous speech 3, said he would give us an evaluation. Is that correct, Graham?
Sorry, yes, I was gesticulating without turning the microphone on. Yes, yes.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you for being a great sport and helping us out there. Okay, I want to get a second chance to tell a quick another story on that is talking about crossed wires. Okay, so I heard from my son and his girlfriend yesterday, and his girlfriend is an astronomer. She just got her PhD from Caltech. She was in a taxi cab going to give a talk about her work, and the taxi cab driver said, well, what do you do? And she said, I use robotic telescopes to investigate the violent deaths of stars. The taxi cab driver, this was in LA, by the way, the taxi cab driver said, oh, well, how do you know who's going to die? And she said, well, what kind of stars are you talking about? I'm talking about stars in the sky. And he said, well, I'm talking about stars that are celebrities. Anyway, that was an example of crossed wires. And now it is time for me to begin to introduce our general evaluator. And it is my pleasure to introduce CBD.
Thank you so much, Emily. At this point, I would like to jump right in. For those who aren't familiar with what is the role of the general evaluator, my job is to kind of be like in Lord of the Rings, the one evaluator to rule them all. So my job here is to bring a couple of people on to give speech evaluations. After that, we'll hear some technician reports, and then I will give the final evaluation, the one that matters the most. So to start things off, yes.
My apologies. I think we should have some table topics first.
I was thinking we were skipping that, but go ahead. Table topics.
Emily, would you like to introduce the table topic master?
Pardon me. All right. Our
Thank you.
yes, our table topics. Thank you for helping me out, Nick. Our table topics leader today is Chris Gould. Thank you very much, Chris Gould, for leading table topics.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, table topics is where you get to speak extemporaneously. You just get a topic thrown at you and you got to figure it out. You also have to do it within certain time limitations. David Carr, can you tell us what those time limitations are?
You want to speak for 1 to 2 minutes. So green at 1, yellow at 1:30, and red at 2.
Thank you. And we'll just have a few since there's a full meeting tonight. Along the lines of crossed wires, I remember once having a new boyfriend and I just was so excited about him and I blew it when I introduced him to my roommates by another man's name. Lou Brown, have you ever messed up with somebody's name?
Madam Topics Master, believe it or not, I have messed up pretty much with everyone's name. The reason being, it takes more than once for me to remember it. And it's probably more so because I may not see that person immediately after. So if I see that person 1, 2, 3 weeks later, I'm like, hey, you, how you doing? And that's how it usually went in the past. However, lately, I'm finding that I may see that person a day later, half a day later, 5 minutes later, and I still forget their name. I'm like, dude, Dan, Derek, Dave. So I'm like, okay, am I getting old? What's going on here? I believe that in today's society, with all of this constant movement of things and changing of things and so many things on our plate, responsibilities, demands of everyone, that it's just impossible to remember things like that. And I hate to put it this way, but oftentimes I'm like, remembering somebody's name is just not high on my priority list. That's going to be near the bottom. Except, of course, if I need that person for something, then I kind of make it something of a priority to remember, but it just never works. Again, I need at least 2 tries for that person to tell me. And you know what? Lately, I used to be a little afraid or embarrassed to ask them, oh, geez, I forgot your name. I'll kind of wait for someone else to say it. One of those things a lot of people do. Now I just come right out with it. Hey, you know what? I forgot your name. What is it? And again, after 2 tries, all downhill from there. Madam Topics Master.
Thank you, Toastmaster Lou Brown. As Graham Cairns can testify, it may be a different day than you think it is for somebody else. Have you ever crossed wires with your dates? Toastmaster Birgit, have you ever shown up when you weren't supposed to or totally missed an opportunity because you forgot it was the wrong date?
I'm a master juggler, actually. I've managed to keep it straight. I think my record is I had 3 dates in one day in college. And luckily I did not show up for the wrong person at the wrong time, but one was an after lunch date, one was a dinner date, and I was in the theater, so the third one was after theater rehearsal. And I always had a really good reason for having to leave. Yeah, I mean, you can end the second date by saying, oh, I have to go to rehearsal. And then you meet up with the third person. So I managed to keep all of those things straight. I would say ever since we've been in an online environment, I have sometimes clicked on the wrong meeting because in my calendar, they're all right next to each other. So a few of my colleagues like to do 15-minute meetings. And so the little box is so small in Outlook that I have sometimes clicked on the wrong box. And then all of a sudden I find myself in a meeting that I'm not supposed to be in. So I just send a little chat saying apologies and leave. If it's somebody that I know well, I'll tell them the truth. But that would be a great example of me being in the wrong meeting at the wrong time. Not because I forgot. I try to tell them that, yeah, I'm just here early because I was so looking forward to this meeting. Madam Table Topics Master.
Oh, great. Now, I'm not positive that this has actually happened to me, but thinking about being at a dinner with friends, and maybe I'm being good and I just ordered a glass of water, but my table mate ordered a vodka tonic and I crossed wires thinking I was taking a sip of water, I get vodka. Toastmaster Jim Gould, have you ever crossed wires with something and put something in your mouth that was not what you expected?
Madam Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Have I ever? Yeah, I suppose I probably have. I can think of one time when I was out to breakfast and I ordered, what was it? It must have been strawberry French toast with whipped cream and some special strawberry butter. Well, I had been talking and not paying much attention, and the food arrived and they set it in front of me, and I looked it over and it looked delicious. But there was this two little round balls of something, and I wasn't quite sure what they were, and I took one and I put it in my mouth. It looked like some sort of icing or something, but it turned out to be butter, and it was a bitter butter, and there was no hilarity to be had at that table that morning. Madam Table Topics Master.
A bitter butter, eh? All right. Today is Labor Day, but the point is not to labor. Jim Barber, does that make sense to you?
Madam Topics Master, my fellow Toastmasters, our most welcome guest this evening. No, it doesn't make sense to me, but I'm at that stage of life where so many things don't make sense to me anymore that I don't really even notice. And if anything, something that does make sense stands out. I go, wow, I didn't expect that. But things that don't make sense is almost commonplace now. That's why politics bores me, because, you know, none of it makes sense, but it's there. It's all around us. But it's not just politics. It's everything in life. Nothing makes sense. And for me, that's incredibly frustrating. I am an engineer by education, a computer programmer by vocation. And so I believe in everything having a good, solid structure. I want things to make sense. I want things to be logical. And then I'm confronted with life. And so often, life does not make sense. And so I simply just no longer expect that. I simply just respond with, well, okay, I guess that's going to happen. So much so that I have forgotten what your original question was, but that doesn't matter. I think I've answered it pretty much. Whatever it was that you asked about, no, it doesn't make sense to me, and that is perfectly normal. Madam Topics Master.
Why should anything make sense? What's the fun in that? Google Maps is great at getting us where we're going if you enter the right destination. Have you ever gotten your wires crossed when trying to navigate somewhere and Google Maps took you to somewhere else? Toastmaster Tiger.
Well, thank you very much, Miss Topic Master, for this engaging question. I switched states from the state of Washington to the state of Oregon. And much to my dismay, I had to retake my driver's test, both the written and the actual driving test. There were no spots available in my local area for driving tests, so I had to go about 120 miles away. Salem, Oregon, a place I'm very unfamiliar with. So I put my coordinates in Google Maps, and I drive up there, and I'm an hour early. Now I'm driving, go through this town, get a little bit out of town. I'm thinking, okay, so the place is a little out of town, no big deal. You have arrived. All I can see is cows. I'm thinking, something's not right. The other thing is, I am out of phone range. So I'm trying to call these people, hey, where are you? Nothing. So I drive back into town. I call them, and you know how people do when they know where they're at. Well, you just go by the Safeway and you turn left at the Shell station and you'll find us. It's no problem, right? Well, I have no idea where the Safeway is, and of course I have no idea where the Shell station is. So I asked, what's your address? He gives me the address, and once again, I put in one number wrong. I drive about 3 miles. You have arrived, and I am at a grocery store. Needless to say, by the time I find these people, they go, oh, we're sorry. You know, we have a tight schedule, and your driving instructor has already left. Took me 2 more months to get my driver's license. So for 2 months, I was stuck getting rides from other people in an area where we are 20 miles from town. Thank you very much for that question, Miss Table Topics Master.
And thank you. Mr. Timer, David Carr, how did our speakers do?
Everybody did just fine, and I will post the exact times in the chat, those who are interested.
Excellent, thank you. And I return to our Toastmaster, Emily Thompson.
Thank you, Chris Gould, and thank you all Table Topics speakers. In order to facilitate this meeting, we have to turn this over right away to BDC, which stands for Brian David Crawford, our general evaluator.
Thank you very much, Emily. For those who heard me the first time, great. Those that didn't, I've already given my introduction. Let's get to the meat of this. We're going to start with our first evaluator, Birgit.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. So thank you, Michael. I feel you have a very calming way of presenting, and you are somehow able to take some what could be very controversial topics, and you're able to present them without any emotion, which I think is perfect for having a speech where the goal was really to present some research that you did. So I found that you actually highlighted some things that we should know, but I'm not sure that everybody does in terms of who has more of the power. Is it the federal government? And I really liked your pun on, well, federal government versus democracy. So I thought that you had some really good points about this has been around since the founding fathers. They're the ones that created the Electoral College. So I thought you did a really good job in bringing all of that information in together, and you present it in a very factual way. Your voice was very warm, but you presented it in a very factual way as well. So I really enjoyed that combination. I would have liked to see a few more explicit statements because I was really fascinated, and I didn't know that only 5 times it was somebody with that did not win the popular vote. We all know what the last one was, but what were the other 4? So it was very fascinating to me. Oh, that only happened 5 times. For some reason, I thought it was more. It would have been great to know who those 4 were because you took that story, and I really wanted to know, quote unquote, the ending to that story. And I felt you could have gotten into a little bit more detail with some examples. You know, are states represented equally? And you hinted at it, but it's, very, very straightforward. In the Senate, they are, no matter how big they are. And in the House, they've got a number of representatives based on population. So, take an example like Rhode Island versus Texas, or I don't know, Virginia versus California or something. I think that would have brought it home a little bit more. So who's got more of the power and who's got more of the power per person? I thought you had a fabulous background for your speech topic. I thought that was really good. I mean, it is probably can't really outdo that one. And even though it didn't look like you were looking at the camera, I think you were still at the right distance from the camera that I could tell you were looking at different people, but I think it worked because you weren't really looking down. So I think whatever your distance is away from the camera, I think that really works. And I really enjoyed your ending quote with United States are versus United States is. I think that kind of brings it home. So thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Birgit. Now we're going to move on to our second evaluator stepping in because our original second evaluator dropped off. So I want to give a special shout out to Graham for doing such a great job before he's even done it. Please welcome Graham.
Thank you, BDC. Thank you, members and guests, and particularly thank you, Lukas. I made a joking reference in my speech to the traditional icebreaker, I was born at a young age in a hospital, be near my mum. That's not how an icebreaker has to go. An icebreaker at its heart is an opportunity for a new member to introduce themselves to the club. Lukas is a relatively new member of this club, but is obviously not a new member of Toastmasters. But he did a masterful job tonight in introducing himself to the club by choosing a single aspect of his life, his boyhood love of drumming, and turning that into something that we now know about him, that he thinks deeply about how we learn and how life is changing. That's a really, really good icebreaker. It tells us something about the member that we are getting to know. So congratulations, Lukas. I really liked that. One of the things that Lukas did, as I say, is took a personal story and use that personal story to expand it into a bigger theme, that we learn differently, that we now have all of the knowledge of the world in at our fingertips, in our pockets. We have more information available to us in our mobile phones than at any other time in human history. The fact that we spend most of our time looking at cat videos and arguing with strangers on the internet is a different matter, but Lukas pointed us to the fact that we do have that information. If there was one thing that I would really like to have seen Lukas achieve in this speech that he didn't do, that would be to talk about the learning that we have done about learning. He said, we learn differently now, but he didn't give us any research that shows what that is meaning to us as a society. That, on the other hand, may be something that Lukas will do in his next speech, or even in the Research and Present speech, which comes up not too far away, because I'd be fascinated to hear some research into the background to that. But most of all, this was meant to be an icebreaker. And the purpose of an icebreaker is to introduce a speaker to the club, for them to get over their initial nervousness, for them to learn how to use the basics of speechifying. Yeah. Lukas obviously knows that stuff, and he put it into practice. There was great eye contact. There was some beautiful turns of phrase. He used the medium as well as could be under the circumstances. The image I felt was a little small because I was watching Lukas in gallery view. It was probably large enough if he'd been in speaker view. When you're going to be presenting online, bear in mind that any image has to be large enough for everybody to see it. But with those couple of minor caveats, congratulations, Lukas. I am really pleased to see you join this club, and I am really grateful that you're going to share your expertise with us. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you so much, Graham. Now we're going to move on to our third evaluator, Jim. Jim Barber, are you in the house?
Yes, I'm in the house. I was punching the wrong button. You'd think the computer would be smart enough to know what I wanted, not what I'm doing. Mr. General Evaluator, my fellow Toastmasters, our most welcome guests, and especially Toastmaster Graham Cairns. Graham, congratulations. With this presentation, you completed your third path through Pathways. You demonstrated beyond all else, not only are you an accomplished speaker, but you are an overachiever. Congratulations, you are making the rest of us look bad. Let me just cut to the chase and review this presentation, evaluate this presentation. In terms of the structure, it was well constructed. You closed by a quote with Shakespeare. I love that. You can't go wrong with quoting from the Bard. Verbals, this one is easy. Listening to you, your vocal variety, as always, was superb. Your volume, your power, top notch. Your diction, your vocabulary, again, without par. Your pacing is wonderful. Everything verbal, good, right down the line. The goal of your speech, you told me ahead of time that although you were going to be addressing some failures, you wanted your speech to be upbeat and inspirational. And congratulations, you did that. That was great. The visual aspects, mostly good. I liked the framing. You used good use of the video frame. That was excellent. I liked that. Your gestures are among the best in the club. They're effective. They're congruent with what you're saying. That was great. I do have a couple of suggestions, and I don't know if I can pull this up because I had all this prepared and now I can't find my visual. Oh well, I'll have to do it without it. In your presentation, your lighting could use a little bit of work. You had a strong overhead light, which tended to wash out your face a little bit. And I had a screenshot to show this. You'll just have to go back and check the video. The other thing is, and again, I'm sorry I can't pull it up, but I'm not a big problem. I don't have a problem with backgrounds, but in your background, there is a spot over your shoulder, right about here, and it looks like something that's intentional. I kept thinking Zoom was trying to get my attention. If nothing else, put a little sticky spot, a little post-it note over that, just to black that out because it is a little bit distracting. But those are two minor things on the visual aspect of your presentation. Otherwise, this was a masterful presentation by an experienced speaker, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with your next path. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Jim Barber. Now we're going to move on to the technicians. These are the people who are looking at specific aspects of all the individual speakers today. Our first person I want to hear from is our grammarian, Donna.
Mr. General Evaluator, cost wire suggests that things are not clear, but today our speakers untangle them as we sped through and learned had information that proved to be hilarious, despite the fact that only two of us use the word hilarity. Thanks, thumbs up to you. Speakers, you kept us focused through your various techniques of rhetorical devices, such as misnomer, a college that has no students, oxymoron, might I suggest, when you have unplanned events in innovative planning, imagery, rubber hits the road, as we talked about the path. And may I suggest we say forward and slip versus age when we talk about saying the wrong name. And of course, alliterations when we talked about bitter, better, butter. Some wires we should untangle include the insertion of the word of when we are talking about officers. Says Vice President Education, Vice President Membership, etc. No of. And when it comes to number and pronoun, may I suggest we keep our minds very clear so that we know whether it's a person who versus a person they versus a person he or she when we go down the line. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Do not worry about these things. Just keep your mind going, keep it clear, and we are with you whether you see us laughing or not. It was hilarious. It was good. It was informative. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you so much, Donna. Now we got to hear about the person who's counting how many times we took a verbal crutch word as opposed to just taking a pause. Please welcome Christian.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator. And I'm going to try to share what I found what I heard, what I experienced visually, and I'm sharing my screen right now. So please be patient because no one got spared. Even the R counter had a crutch word. So here's what we found in this session today, and I'll share the report in the chat afterwards for improvement. The most commonly used crutch word has been so. That was 31% of the filler words that we use. It was also followed by and double clutch. Very interesting. I mean, so, and double clutches. And that was quite interesting for me because I nearly went cuckoo and crazy with the double clutches. In terms of our good performers, hats off to our grammarian Toastmaster Donna. No filler words so far. And yes, no filler words because you have completed your reports. Toastmaster Chani and Rosanna, as well as Antoinette. I didn't hear any filler words. I hope it stays that way. For everyone else, please watch out for the report I'm going to share in the chat in a few minutes. Thank you so much. Back to you, Mr. Journal Evaluator.
Thank you so much for that wonderful report. Next, we have to go to the two special roles that are unique to this club. We're going to start with our watcher, which is Antoinette. Antoinette, tell us how we did.
Okay, I'm here once more again. I'm happy to report that all of us looked more or less good with our backgrounds. I want to give a shout out to Martin. He has shown great improvement in his background because I know he had some challenges before. I also would like to draw attention to Donald and Lucas's background in the sense that they have the same background, but Donald one needs to be more, should I say, clearer. Maybe something is wrong with the video, so I hope that next time she comes on stream that it will be improved. All in all, just continue doing that, what we continue doing. Back to you, BDC.
Thank you so much, Antoinette. Next, we want to talk about the person looking at how we talk on the sidelines. Cheney, please let us know how we did.
Thank you, General Evaluator. We started off very strong in the chat room, and much hilarity ensued as we were talking about The Wizard of Oz, Shakespeare, and other topics. Then the speeches started. Once the speeches started, the chat room went relatively quiet for two reasons. One is it didn't appear that the speakers had pre-prepared any chats to engage us on the chat room. But second, which is more important, is that the speeches were all very engaging. So as a result, we didn't have much action in the chat room until we got into the table topics, and then it's ensued from there. The other piece that I wanted to point out was, given the theme of the day, which is wires crossed, we can certainly see how wires cross very easily in the chat room. Thankfully, we have a lot of strong hosts and a lot of folks who take their role seriously, who will elevate and repeat different key tasks so that we know ahead of time what we need to be doing each as we move forward in the meeting. With that, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Janie. The last person I normally would call on is our timer, but considering David has already given us the times in the chat, David, is there anything else you'd like to add, or are you?
I'm done.
You're done. Excellent. Cool. This is where we move into my one evaluation to rule them all. Let's start from the top. Birgit, I love that you gave positive and opportunities for improvement, but most importantly, I like that you explained why they mattered, particularly when you were talking about the 5 people who had been impeached or had won the presidency without winning the popular vote. Graham, I love that you explained to the audience what an icebreaker is and why it mattered. That goes back to the heart of what I believe an evaluation is, which is for the benefit of the audience, not for the benefit of the speaker. It's to tell everyone, this is what you should expect if you take the opportunity to speak in front of us. So thank you very much, Grim, for that. Jim, I always like to say, unmute yourself about 5 seconds before you need to speak. So when you hear the person wrapping up before you, unmute yourself. That could be the fact that it's very hard to have an agenda in front of us during these virtual meetings. So I just want to take this as an opportunity to remind everyone, figure out how way to have the agenda in front of you during the meeting. Donna, I loved the great use of the word of the day throughout your speech and how you integrated the theme throughout your entire evaluation. The one thing I would talk about is be sure to be cautious of pronoun usage. Some people may not be using the pronouns that they normally appear. Some people prefer to use theys and thems to refer to themselves as opposed to he, she's. So that's just something to keep in mind. Christian, you gave us a frickin' pie chart. Antoinette, you're such a ball of sunshine. You could do literally any role, and I would be thrilled to see you there. And Cheney, I think this is the first time I really have seen you take on the role of the chat monitor, but I love your proactive way to engage us through the chat. You were sending IMs left and right. I felt like you might have been the #1 IM, or if there was such an award. So I want to thank you so much because that was phenomenal, John. Overall, I'm so happy we all participated. I'm so glad that this strong club exists and that everyone works so hard to make sure it is as good a club as it is. And that's all I've got. So I'm going to pass it back to our Toastmaster of the day, the one, the only, Emily.
Thank you, Brian, David, Crawford. Thank you, speakers, evaluators, members filling roles, and our new Sergeant at Arms, Andre. Give yourselves a round of applause for a great evening, and we're going to send this over to Nick, our president.
Thank you very much, Emily, BDC, and all the role players, all the speakers. Fantastic work today. What you did today, we lost a little bit of time, but you made it up. Everybody worked together in the background, communicating, collaborating, and getting the show done on time. So well done to everybody today. I've got a couple of announcements, and I am going to come to a couple of guests. So please be ready. Graham from New Zealand. Let's have a look at one or two of the announcements. Christian, our Vice President of Education, has asked me to make a couple of points about the Toastmaster roles, which have been assigned through until the first week of November. Please make sure you confirm your allocated slot or reach out to Christian if you have a problem with it. In an advanced club, you should be able to find your own replacement, right? That's a challenge for you. Have a look at that. The next challenge is in 2 weeks' time, table topics contest. Christian's already mentioned it earlier. 3 participants are signed up as table topic speakers already. We also would like to have another chief judge, a couple of judges and timers as well. So please contact Christian or sign up on the website. In terms of announcements from me, I just have a couple of things. If you haven't done so already, please fill out the survey. Also, David has got a renewals. David, how many have we got signed up? Have we had anybody sign up over this course of the meeting?
Well, actually, I got a payment from Andy, and I had to remind him that he'd already paid me, so I'm going to have to give him a refund. But you know, we could have worse problems. We have 39 members already paid through March, and another 28 or so that we're working on getting rid of.
Well done. Thank you very much, David. Great job to all our members. Thank you. Now, let's see what our guests made of this. Graham, are you there from New Zealand, from the North Island?
I think Christian may have taken him off to, no, well, I think he's gone off to the...
I'm here, yep.
Oh, there you go. Sorry.
It's okay.
What are you going to take away from our meeting today?
Well, I've got an A4 piece of paper here that's just littered with notes, and we all do things very differently, which is a good quality, I guess, but you do run a very efficient meeting. And I just thought the way that the Toastmaster that I introduced the speaker very briefly and then left it till the other end before the evaluators came back on it. I thought that was very efficient. And also your Sergeant at Arms started the meeting and made sure in front of everybody whose role was what, and though everyone knew what was going on with respect to that. I liked the timing device. I liked the way that each person came in with their specific role and the peripheral roles, which was somebody watching the meeting, I guess an R counter and a few other things. I just thought it was pretty, and I've never seen anyone voted off a speech because they would have a time. Now, I know there are vote forms available, and I think that's a great idea because it doesn't mean that some one person is guessing who should or should not have won that for the night, but it's actually done correctly through a process of voting. And
Thanks, Graham. Graham, I'm going to have to pause you there. We'll have a chat afterwards. Just let me pause you there for a second. It's coming up towards 9 o'clock Eastern. I would just like to say, is Carl Walsh in the room? Carl, are you going to enter the contest in 2 weeks' time? Are you there, Carl?
Me? Enter the contest? I'm thinking about it.
Yay. Okay, well, we need you and a few others to join in for the contest, and make sure you sign up for the other roles as well. For those of you who do, have not done it before, have a go. How else are you going to learn without doing it? It's time. It's 9 p.m. rather, Eastern. It's 2 a.m. where I am, and it's time for bed. Please have a lovely week. Thank you all for attending. Wonderful meeting. Thank you.